Oh, woe is me. Man. You know, I really want to play Shining Force 3, but I already reviewed 1 and 2, but I haven't done CD, and I can't just skip CD, but I don't want to play that, man. I've heard that it's just Shining Force 1 and 2, but without the towns. Shining Force CD. They might as well have called it No Towns CD. I don't want to play that shit, but alas, I have to. I'm stuck. It's my duty to do this for an unspecific reason, but I really don't want to. Man, what am I gonna do? Oh, I know. Let's use my copy of Chrono Trigger to contact myself in the past. Me in 1994, I'm gonna tell him to review this game because 3 doesn't exist yet, so he doesn't know what he's missing. So, yeah, let's do it. Hello, is this me in 1994?
No, who is this?
What do you mean it's not?
Huh?
Oh, I haven't been born yet? Oh, that's right. Well, yeah. Well, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're gonna have a kid soon, and when you do, tell him to review Shining Force CD and then leave the tape at the house he's gonna live at in about 30 years. You know, they won't care. Like, they're cool. Yeah, you're gonna have a kid. No, stop crying. No, it's gonna be okay. Trust me, I'm cool. Like, come on, man. No, don't. Okay, well, if you do have a kid, just let him know, okay? All right. I'll bet that worked. I guarantee you my review of Shining Force CD is gonna be right here if I reach up on the shelf. Holy shit, wow, it actually worked. Me in the past reviewed Shining Force CD, so me in the present doesn't have to. I sure hope that these time travel shenanigans won't have any long-lasting impacts on me or my well-being. Anyway, let's watch the review. Hi, it's me, Past Jason. Don't ask why I'm called that. And Shining Force CD, whoa! That's awesome. It's like you get to play Shining Force on a CD. Whoa, how cool is that? This is gonna be the greatest game ever made. I just know it. Shining Force CD is a Super Mario All-Stars-esque remake of 2 separate Game Gear spin-offs in the style of the Genesis titles, with a new 3rd campaign tacked on which unlocks after you finish the first 2. Graphics are the same, music are the same, compositions, though thanks to the mega power of the Sega CD, has CD quality instrumentation. For better or worse, they are faithful adaptations, meaning that the new Shining Force game for your fancy CD-based game console is, at its core, still a dressed-down rendition of the original 2 Shining Forces. Namely, there are no towns, there's no explorable overworld, it's just fights with a little town screen resembling Shining in the Darkness in between, where you can save, use the shop, revive party members, that type of thing. There is no way to put this other than disappointing, because before even starting the game, just knowing that this is the conceit is a massive turnoff. You're getting Game Gear design on a more capable platform, and that's lame. Well, let's put that aside and see what this game does have to offer. Starting with an adjustable difficulty. I picked very hard because my primary complaint with both 1 and 2 are how gosh darned easy they are. Maybe CD can end up being some hardcore masochist run of nothing else. Opening cutscene hammers in this game's place on the timeline. Is that you, Roos, son of Lug? They wheel out every starting character one by one and spell out explicitly how they're related to the party members in the original Shining Force. Which, fine, it's a little silly that everyone in the first game ended up having kids who were exactly like they were, but it is what it is. No, those days are behind you now. We are the new Shining Force, is a line that pretty much sums up the entire story of Book 1, and why is it always books? Fire Emblem does this too. Whenever there are multiple parts to a strategy RPG, they're always called books. It makes sense here with Shining Force's framing device as a story being told to you by someone else. Guardiana is good, Cypress is evil, and you lead a small army called the Shining Force, tasked with defeating them. Setup is as standard as it gets. My favorite bit of Book 1 happens right at the start. First fight is sort of a tutorial taking place on a boat. You're decked out with good starting equipment and protect rings, after which it sinks, and Battle 2 begins with you washed ashore and equipmentless. You have to search the tiles around you for things to equip, then transfer whatever you find to the party members so you can actually use them. It's a frantic and creative situation. Makes you feel like you're fighting a real guerrilla war, just scrapping by. The effect is dulled a bit because even with this frantic scenario, the enemy AI is nowhere near aggressive enough to take advantage. In every battle in this whole game, and in all of the other Shining games, and all the books, your enemy will never engage you first. You will always be able to keep your distance, heal yourself, and regroup, or in this case, search the beach for weapons. All the difficulty selection does is modify how much damage the enemies deal. They in no way make the game's logic any better, and the AI is dumb as rocks.
So even on very hard, Shining Force CD is actually pretty easy, at least compared to something like Fire Emblem or Tactics Ogre. It's not beating the allegations of being too easy, at least not so far.
CD being a remake of two smaller Game Gear games results in me being less interested in the party because halfway through a typical length Shining Force game, you restart with a completely new team. You end up spending a lot less time with each party configuration. And this problem is only compounded by the lack of exploration in town segments. Even just seeing your party mulling around a little bar in the original went a long way. Here, you don't really get anything. Oh, I found Domingo, that standout weird octopus flying guy from the original, in a bush, just in a random bush. There's a few other hidden characters which are found in other similarly devious ways, which I failed to find. I was just lucky seeing Domingo. Wasn't even paying attention, just mashed through, and I hit search. That's a good thing. Whenever there's a secret, when you bring up the menu, instead of the default option being to wait, it's to search. A clever little way to make it a little more likely that you'll actually find a secret. Domingo rules. He just flies around casting Freeze 3 on everyone. Only they made him kinda suck in CD. Not that he got nerfed or anything, he's still the same old Domingo, but his presence made me realize a fundamental difference between Shining Force CD and the other games. It doesn't have much of an early to mid game. The original Shining Force was separated into 8 chapters, and the first 2 books of CD, aka the Game Gear remakes, have 4 each. But the way each one is structured is as if the game starts on Chapter 5, if that makes any sense. There's not really a prolonged beginning, you're just kind of further up on the bell curve when it starts. Almost like when an RPG begins with you already at like level 20 or something, except that's not exactly what they're doing here because you still start at level 1. It's just figuratively, that's what I'm saying. Normally there's a longer ramp up in these games before you get to the hard enemies with a lot of HP, but in CD, by Chapter 2, you're already fighting things with 30 or 40 HP. My point is, enemies on average have much more HP than they did in the Genesis games, and magic spells in Shining Force do not scale with any stats or levels, they do fixed damage. So dealing 20 with a Freeze 3 is nowhere near as useful here as it was in those other games. I remember watching RPG Fortress's video where he called the magic system broken because they increased the range of each spell and had them do more damage, but that's only true in the original Game Gear renditions. In CD, they reined it in and damage values are back to normal. So it goes from being a win the game hack to really something you don't even need. In fact, I ended up almost ditching mages entirely by the end because they simply weren't pulling their weight. An unthinkable proposition in the last 2 games. What they did adjust, though, are the monks, overcompensating for the fact that Gong sucked. Cray in Book 1 and Luke in Book 2 are cheat codes. They hit harder than the protagonists, learned healing magic. I'm sure Sig is pretty good too, he just wasn't the one I ended up getting going. Monks are an absolute must when playing through this one. Here's my character tier list. Judge if you've played before. As I've explained, mages take an enormous hit in this. I ended up using Natasha in the end for her attack buff spell, not even for her blaze or freeze magic. The only real dead weights I tried to use were the priests It could be because I never bother with status effects in Shining Force, but being just a pure healer alone, which after a couple chapters die in one hit, that's simply not cutting it. I couldn't even keep them safe long enough for them to heal people most fights. Sarah I put in fine tier because you get her at a higher level, so she's not quite as squishy. Most of the mages are here too, as well as strong units with low mobility such as Gaian and Roos. They're just too slow. They always lag behind the party, so I have to slow down in order for them to catch up. Natasha is a tier up from the other mages because of her attack buff. Archers are OP in this, so Stock, even though I didn't end up using him for very long, gets a little bit of respect here. Jaha, even though he's the same thing as Roos, is higher up because he's the one I ended up using for most of my Book 3 party. Awesome tier are the Centaurs, the best all-around physical units, not quite as strong as the Gladiators, but they make up for it with their incredible mobility. Same for Claude the Birdman, not quite as strong as the Centaurs, but being able to fly makes up for it. Then there's the almost too good to use club. Both the protagonists, both monks I used, and both snipers. These classes are just too good. The protagonists get bolt magic along with being the most capable physical fighters. Monks heal and do crazy bonkers damage, and the archers hit harder than anyone while being hidden from behind the front line. These were my meat and potatoes, that's how I won fights. Something Shining Force CD added, at least I think it did, if it was in the other games I never messed with it, is auto battle. From the camp screen you can set any and all of your party members to fight for themselves, which I had my entire party do for this one fight, and I won, wow. So if I could just auto fight and win, then why bother playing the game? Well, the issues are you're unable to clean up treasure chests, and it's not smart enough to redistribute experience points in a way that makes sense. Like, it'll just feed your most powerful units even if they're only gaining 1 point per battle. You gotta spread the love in these games, or else people fall behind. Your team needs to be as balanced as possible. If someone is falling a couple levels behind where they should be, you gotta manufacture some kills for them. The CPU has absolutely no sense for this, so I noticed that computer-controlled party members like to follow the protagonist on the map, so what I ended up settling on for a while was, until the battles got too difficult, this is, select a task force of my highest leveled units that I'm not really worried about leveling up, and they would act as computer-controlled bodyguards for the player. If I didn't want them stealing all the kills, I would just have the protagonist run away and disengage. Something I noticed which really pissed me off was the game will sometimes arbitrarily fuck with your party composition. Whenever someone joins the team as a part of a scripted story event, they just kick one of your party members out without letting you choose. In any other game, if there is going to be a new person joining, they don't let you bring a full team, right? In Shining Force, a full team is 12 members. If someone is joining, they should only allow you to bring 11, instead of just kicking a random person out. I think they go for whoever's the lowest level, or unpromoted. More than once at camp, I finished with all my item management and carefully selected who I want to come to the next battle, choosing a few units that are falling behind so I want to get them to catch up, right? Just training up my weaker soldiers. Only to find when the fight starts, the person I specifically picked because they are weak and I wanted them to catch up was kicked out of the party to make room for this new asshole I didn't even want. That's nonsense.
So after Book 1, my fears of this just being Shining Force but stripped down without the towns seem to be coming true, but luckily Book 1 is only a third of the game.
Book 2 was not only more difficult, but also had much more creative battles. After the opening beach fight in 1, I was incredibly unimpressed. 2 is sort of the opposite. After a slow start, business begins to pick up when you're boarding a boat, and the plank you're using to get on snaps in half, leaving half your party on land while you uncontrollably drift away. Then for the next 6 fights, you only have half your team. 3 battles with your party, then 3 with the splinter group left behind, led by your mage Natasha. Being led by a mage is a completely different dynamic than normal, because when the party leader is defeated, you automatically lose the battle.
battle. When that person is the protagonist, he is one of, if not your best frontline fighters, so you would have to be pretty reckless to let him die. But Natasha is a wimpy mage who dies in 1 or 2 hits. It fundamentally changes how to approach the fights where she's in the lead. And this vertical cliff climbing map used on our first battle is pretty unique too. What else? There's a laser eye ripoff fight, because of course there is. It was great the first time, but it's less great every time they reuse this gimmick. Still a memorable fight though, because after all, it is a great gimmick. There's a reason that they're reusing it so much. There's one where you're walking through a volcano where the scenery breaks away and changes every few turns, and I thought that was neat. Overall, there's a little bit more going on with your average battles in Book 2. If you only have time to play one or the other, I would say skip one and just play 2. Its final boss is every bit as challenging as a final fight should be. I don't even remember what the final boss of the first book was because I steamrolled them and never thought about it ever again, but this one took some good old-fashioned trial and error planning. Tactics Ogre would be proud. These 2 walking eyeball things are a bastard to deal with, and they respawn instantly as soon as you kill them. These little worm guys each cast level 3 magic, which if you're not careful can take chunks out of 5 party members at a time. And that huge guy in the middle himself can basically kill anyone he wants to if the game decides to zero in on them, because he moves 2 to 3 times for every turn one of your party members get. He also has devastating AoE moves, which can render the fight unwinnable if he gets more than a few of your guys with it. So I determined it was best to send them up one at a time, maybe with an archer on this perch here until they die. It was as if I was sacrificing all of my new friends one by one to some great Sega CD god, because they would just walk up, get their one hit in, and then get eviscerated. Rinse and repeat until he's finally dead. Eventually he does die though, and yeah, that fight ruled. So, Book 2 is no doubt better than Book 1, but I'm still not really wetting my willy. It's still not amazing. I still would call this so far the worst game in the Shining Force series, because remember, it's 1994, and these are the only games that exist, 1, 2, and this. And I guess the Game Gear games, but fuck the Game Gear games, they don't count, even though this is a remake of them. But then you unlock the third scenario, and it really does make the whole thing worthwhile. Book 3 in Shining Force CD is Shining Force at its absolute best. It's just a shame that you have to play through 2 entire mediocre Shining Force games to get to it. But at the same time, Book 3 also wouldn't have the same impact on you if you didn't play through Books 1 and 2. So, you know, if they let you just jump in, it really wouldn't work in the same way because, man, just Book 3 is only 6 battles long. Only 6 battles, but these have to be the 6 best battles in all of Shining Force. Or at least 6 of the top 10 if I were to rank them. It is wild. They got frickin' Domingo casting Ice 4 and killing like 5 guys. That's how freaking crazy they got with these level designs. The plot of Book 3 is that the protagonist of Book 1 is about to be crowned king, but some old witch thinks he needs to be tested even further, so she kidnaps the queen and invites you to her mansion, where you'll take on her army to prove your worth to becoming king of the land. I feel like it's inspired by the part in Dragon Ball when Goku had to climb that tower as a kid, or maybe in the Buu arc when they go inside that underground spaceship, or maybe even like the time they fight Fortune Teller Baba. I don't know, I'm sure this is in a lot of anime, but I'm not very cultured, so Dragon Ball is just my go-to. It's all an elaborate excuse to have some wacky off-the-wall fights. You do a fight, you go to the next room, you do another. It's by far the most fun, perhaps just because you're able to build a super team from your parties from both books 1 and 2, including being able to use both protagonists. That's right, you get 2 hero classes on your team at the same time, 2 overpowered monks, 2 snipers which fuck shit up from up to 4 tiles away, double the Centaur Knights. Man, it's a real shame you're only allowed to bring 12 units. I even made a spreadsheet to help me choose. Battle 1 is in a cemetery, and as each of your units are defeated, more and more zombies spawn in, causing the battle to become more frantic the longer it drags on. Doesn't sound like much, but it's more than what most of these fights give you. Next is the one where most of the soldiers drank too much and are unable to fight. There are enemy sprites all over this map, but only some of them actually attack. It's sort of like playing Where's Waldo, searching for who you're actually supposed to be fighting. Next, you get seduced by some kimono girls, and this fight combines both the gimmicks we've seen so far. As you make your way closer to the boss, more and more enemies spawn in, such as these statues by the entrance coming to life, or ninja girls leaping out of the pond, or dropping from the ceiling. It's also a bit of a hidden ball trick, because even though these girls look similar, each one represents a different class. But you can't really tell who's what from a glance, so it's about figuring out who the physical fighters are, who has the deadly magic, who's the healer, etc. Then we have a quasi-maze with choke points where the enemy will ambush you. There's some dangerous mages and bazookas which hide behind these walls. It's around this time most of your party will begin to max their stats out. Once you reach level 20, that's it. The characters will continue to level up, but they do not gain any more stats. By now, most, if not all, of my key players were at or above a promoted level 20, so I'm pretty much stuck with what I got from here on out. And on very hard, I'd say it's balanced well, and this maze fight took a few tries. I'm a little excited because this is almost the first time a Shining Force game has given me any pushback whatsoever. Playing Tactics Ogre spoiled me. I expect every fight to be like this after that. The penultimate battle is pure Kino, a mirror match against the exact party you bring into the fight. The AI, as established earlier, is garbage, so this isn't much of a challenge, but it's still very cool to see. For funsies, I decided to bring a whole bunch of jobbers off my bench for this, the Shining Force equivalent of putting in the backups when you're up 49 with 3 minutes to go. Since the enemy's strength matches yours, you can get away with bringing in weak bastards that don't matter. Finally, the last battle of Book 3 is the Laser Eye, a boss rush, and a frantic avoid the stage obstacles fight, all rolled into one. Now, if that sounds like way too much to contend with, that's because it kind of was, and this fight took me a few tries as well. But after that, it's over. We're crowned king, and presumably lived happy ever after that. But wait, there's more! One more battle after the credits against every single boss from all 3 books. I was going to do this, but there is no way to select your team. You're stuck with the goobers the game gives you. So if you weren't leveling these guys up, then you're shit out of luck. The only way to stand a chance is to replay Book 3 and use that mirror match to grind up specifically these party members, because they're the ones you're forced to use for the bonus fight. What a load of shit, so I didn't do it. That's a no from me, dog. Book 3 is the reason to check out Shining Force CD. I was underwhelmed playing through the main game, but this bonus campaign kicked ass, even if it was only 6 battles long. And that's all I got. Shout out to the future patrons. Never trust anyone who needs a haircut. Back to you, present Jason.
Well, that review sucked. He didn't even take his shirt off. Doesn't he know that we take our shirts off in our reviews around here? Here, let me demonstrate. Wait, I can't seem to grab my... Wait, why are my hands turning invisible? Oh no. What's happening to me? It's like I've erased myself from existence by contacting my parents from the past. No!